without you. Please visit internationalanimalrescue.org and help us save orangutans before it's too late. That's internationalanimalrescue.org.
They say that if you want to know a person, you should walk a mile in their shoes. Same thing goes for tires. Except Firestone knows it's not just 1 mile, it's many. With the industry-leading 90-day buy and try guarantee, you can test drive our tires for 90 days. Then if you're not fully satisfied with them, we'll refund or replace them for you. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone.
Conditions apply. See FirestoneTire.com for details.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. The Allen, Texas Police Department is responding to news reports that the mother of the suspected Walmart shooter in El Paso called them with concerns about her son purchasing a gun. The statement said they did a search of their phone records and identified a call that came in at 11:15 a.m. on June 27th. The public safety officer answered informational questions about firearms possession and ownership. Houston police say 2 people were shot and killed on Interstate 10. KPRC TV in Houston reports that the shooter is still on the run. Police don't believe the incident was related to road rage and that it was not random. However, it's unclear what led up to the rush hour shooting. More than 350 migrants are free for now after massive raids in Mississippi this week.
CNN says they were released by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. Some are expected to face proceedings in federal immigration courts. About 680 migrants were rounded up at several food processing plants across Mississippi. Targeted companies include Petco Foods and poultry producer Koch Foods. Tom Roberts, NBC News Radio.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says tackling gun violence is high on his agenda, but he won't cut short the August recess to do it. The Kentucky Republican said today he doesn't think forcing senators to return to the nation's capital early would do much good. McConnell believes many lawmakers would use the opportunity to score political points. Police say a woman stabbed today in downtown Pittsburgh has died. Police Commander Victor Joseph said they're working on determining a motive on why the crime took place.
Seems by all accounts a random act of violence. Thankfully, we had an officer that was on scene when the incident happened.
The incident happened just before noon in front of a Burlington coat factory store. Detectives say a patrol officer was questioning a woman who was spotted sleeping under a bus shelter when a man came from behind the officer and stabbed the woman in the neck. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio.
If you are one of the millions of Californians who prefer to use affordable natural gas to heat your home and cook your food, you need to listen to this message. There are powerful national organizations and California bureaucrats who don't like natural gas or propane either. They want to prohibit Californians from using these affordable, reliable energy sources. They want Californians to rely solely on high-priced electricity. Don't let them take away your energy options. We are Californians for Balanced Energy Solutions. Californians want affordable, reliable energy options that serve their family and business needs, not electric-only mandates. Learn more about how gas is fighting climate change, reducing smog, and helping keep California's economy strong. Visit www.c4bes.org and join us. Paid for by Californians for Balanced Energy Solutions.
Are you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
Welcome, friends. You're tuned into KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I'm your fill-in host, Dr. John Smith. Some of you may remember me from other episodes where I've been a guest. Father John is enjoying a well-deserved evening off, asked me to fill in for him, and I am very excited and honored to do that. By the way, you can follow this show on Facebook and Instagram at Viewpoint with Father John. For Father John, all of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. He's on a quest to help as many possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing of false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. His role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations and realizing one's spiritual potential. I am really excited to be here tonight. Before we get started with our guest, who I've been looking forward to interviewing for the last couple of weeks since Father John asked me to do this, I'm really excited. We'll be talking about that in a moment, but I wanted to talk about something very serious for a moment. As you may have be aware of, looking at the news and watching the radio and watching Facebook, whatever, we are in the midst of an opioid crisis. It's just taking thousands and thousands of lives every day and every year. And this year, Social Model Recovery Systems, an organization that I am very familiar with, they do great work, is putting on their second annual opioid conference. It's the California Community Opioid Conference, November 21st and 22nd at the Anaheim Convention Center. What makes this event special is that it's not just for professionals, it's for the community, because the idea is to get the community working together to solve this crisis and deal with it the best way that we can. Their motto, saving one more life, preventing one more death. If you're interested, I would urge you to go to their website, which is SM as in Mary, RS, OPIOID, smrsoPIOID.org for more information. Also, if you're a corporation or part of a corporation listening to this, they are looking for some assistance and sponsorship for this event. So I really can't urge you enough to take a look at that, go to that website, and hopefully see you there. So my guest tonight is best-selling author Megan Fenyoe, LCSW. She is the author of You Are Enough, 5 Steps to Move from Struggle to Strength, which we have up on our screen. Megan is also the founder of the I Am Enough movement, which we will talk about a bit more later in the show. A little bit about Megan, and then I'll let her tell you more about herself. She is a veteran and served in the Air Force. Thank you for your service, Megan. She is an LCSW and also a mindset coach. I have some questions about that. And she is the host of also a podcast called the Blonde Bombshell Podcast. So I definitely like to hear more about that. So first of all, welcome to the show, Megan.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Good. I would like to. I think I shared with you in an email when we were preparing for the show that since I read your book, I noticed that your book and my book, The Authentic Man, there were a lot of similarities and a lot of things. It was like I was writing a book for men and you were writing a book not just for women, but you were writing a book for women. It was like we were sort of channeling one another while we were writing, because you were saying a lot of the same things that I was. So I know that your book is based upon your own personal story and the struggles that you've had to overcome. Tell us a little bit about your book and a little bit about your story, if you would, just to start us off.
Yeah, definitely. And I love that your book has the word authentic in it, because part of my story really revolves around me having to redefine my values when I got out of my narcissistic abusive marriage. And one of my top values is authenticity.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, I grew up in a Christian home. I went to a Christian school. I've been a Christian for 40 years. And, you know, although I grew up in a very abusive home, we still went to church, and I still, you know, got the value of Christianity. But when I was going through, you know, all of the struggles in my teenage years and then in my adult life, which led me to write my book, there were so many times where I did, you know, struggle with what does God want for my life and why is he doing this? All of these questions of why him, right?
Right.
When it really wasn't about why him, it was like, instead of questioning like why God was doing this, saying like,
what did you do wrong?
Right, exactly. What did I do wrong, or
right.
what does he have in store for you?
Right.
Because of this.
Well, you knew something was supposed to happen, but you just didn't know when and how, right?
Exactly. And, you know, this is my first book, and I'm going to be very authentic, because that's my heart, and that's who I am. I have a very close relationship with God, and I've always walked with him. And in my first book, I didn't talk a lot about him. And I think it's because so many people said, it's your first book, don't do it. Yes, do it, don't do it. And I chose the latter. I talked about him a little bit, but not as much as the profound journey that he took me through in this book.
Right.
And in this last 2 years of my life, because literally, like, this book is my saving grace. And
yes.
I never expected my life to turn out. If you would have asked me, like, 2 years ago when I was still with my ex-husband, I would have laughed in your face. I would have been like, no, there's no way. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm going to be a best-selling author, and I'm going to be speaking all over the country.
Funny how that works.
It is, right? And, like, God is just, for so many years, I questioned what God was doing. And it's,
right.
I did not marry a man that went to church. Like, he went to church, but, like, he, you know, and we prayed, but I don't really know that, like, he truly believed in God and, like, what
Well, you
does
said
for
that
us.
you said that he was in your book and have described him as being a narcissist, which is, for those that don't know, it's just basically someone who is completely flattered with themselves, and it can take on a very abusive quality. And you would have not known that. You would have not spotted it if you've not had an experience with someone like that. So to get sucked into the web of a narcissist is, especially for someone that's a giver like you, that makes perfect sense to me. In fact, in my book, I talk about the 10 different types of men, and one of those types, in its worst form, can be a narcissist. It's not an uncommon thing, as you know.
It's not, I mean, but it is in a way, because narcissism isn't talked about
Yes.
very much. And it's not one of those, you know, relationships that you can see, because there's really no physical bruises.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, my ex-husband had an affair for 14 months of our 2.5-year marriage.
Oh, my gosh.
And he literally made me feel like it was all my fault.
Isn't that what they call gaslighting?
Yes,
Yes.
that is the gaslighting.
Yes.
Yep. And then so we went through the gaslighting, and then he would love bomb me, right? So, like, he would gaslight me and make me feel like I was the crazy one, that I was the one that was wrong, that I was the one that caused him to have the affair. And then he would love bomb me, which would be like, as the minute I pulled away, he would ask for me back. And he would, like, take me on trips, and he would do this, and he would do that, and he'd go to church with me, and, you know, he would do all of this stuff. And
then you'd think you were crazy, because you go, how could this perfect man be like that? It must be me, right? I'm sure there are a lot of folks out there that are having the same struggles, and a lot of people that have been going through similar kinds of relationships. I know in my own practice, I've had a lot of people who I've had to help them. It took a long time for them to get out of these relationships and actually to rebuild their self-esteem, because it had been so destroyed by this relationship that they didn't think much of themselves.
Yeah, and it actually took me 6 years. So our divorce, he actually pulled our divorce papers 4 times and asked for me back 4 different times. And so our divorce was final in 2016. But I stayed faithful and committed to him for 2 years after that, because I made a commitment between him and God. Like, that was my first marriage. And yes, he, you know, had an affair.
You were following what I call the book that we all.
Yeah.
I noticed you come from the Midwest, as I did, and you know how we're raised with a lot of those values and a lot of those beliefs, and you know I followed mine, and they were supposed to lead me to happiness and all kinds of things, and it didn't happen. So I got kind of upset about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, in the midst of when I found out about the affair, I was so angry at God. Like, I have to tell you a story just real quick. I remember when my ex-husband kicked me out of our house the first time. It was 6 months after we got married, and it was 2 months after I left the Air Force. I had no money, no nothing, and I had gotten a job as a therapist in L.A., and I was living in Northern California at the time. and I had no money. And I remember finding this 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment, and I was cleaning the apartment. It was so gross. It was so, like, just dirty. And I remember, like, having this argument with God, and I was screaming at him, where the neighbors, like, came over, and they're like, "Are you okay?" Like, they literally thought that I was, like, having an argument with a human being. But
the
I was
cops
just, like,
come and nobody's there.
Yeah,
You might be going
right.
to the hospital, maybe.
But I just remember I was, like, on the floor on my knees saying, like, "God, why are you doing this?" Like,
right.
And again, it was because I wasn't listening, because I was so scared and believing that I wasn't enough.
Right.
That
Well,
I was
because you
so
thought
scared.
all along you thought it was you. Something was wrong with you.
Yep.
You were broken, defective. We call that shame, but you had a sense of shame, which obviously that was something that sort of got ingrained early on in your childhood, and then you carried it with you, kind of what we call a core belief, which kind of leads me to my next question. I know that one of the areas you talk a lot about in your book is that how many of us become stuck in our old thinking and beliefs that cause us to sort of mask who we truly are, our true selves. I write about it in a similar way. How do we become unstuck?
That is a great question. And the
Good.
first
I'm
thing
glad
is
I asked it.
I love this question because it's actually it's an easy question, but it's not an easy question, right? Because what I'm going to say is, well, we just have to think the opposite. Easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
So what I learned, I've been a mental health therapist for 15 years. And when I was going through all of this stuff, this was, in the last 6 years, everything that I had learned had gone out the window. So it's literally saying, who is telling you this story that you're not enough? And so my ex-husband never told me that I wasn't enough, but I created this story in my head based on his behaviors and his actions and what he did, that I began to believe I wasn't enough.
Yes.
And so it's all about...
Do you think you had that going on before, but it just never came to the surface?
Yes, I think I've always kind of struggled with that because of the environment that I grew up in, and I have a learning disability and all of that. But I've been successful, in my career. Relationships, not so much, but I think, it's always kind of manifested.
Right.
And it wasn't until, I really, I was 34 years old when I got married.
Oh, wow. I want to keep going on this. It's time for us to take a little break. We'll be right back after this break, and we'll continue this conversation. Thank you.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personal funeral planning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
Need a speaker for a church group, women's group, senior group? A speaker with an uplifting message about aging? A speaker with 20 years experience in senior and health care who reveals what you need to know to protect yourself as you grow older. She's the author of the book titled Old Age, The Paradox of Physical Decline and Spiritual Greatness. Author and speaker Barbara Matthews exposes the shortcomings of our present-day system of caring for older adults and offers a better model filled with purpose and meaning. Barbara Matthews is available available for presentations from half an hour to all-day events. For more information, email ageofbeing@gmail.com. That's ageofbeing@gmail.com. You can also find her book, Old Age, The Paradox of Physical Decline and Spiritual Greatness at Amazon.com.
Welcome back. This is KCAA Radio, 1050 AM. This is the Viewpoint show with Father John, and I'm your fill-in host tonight, Dr. John Smith. My guest tonight is best-selling author Megan Fenyoe, LCSW, author of You Are Enough, 5 Steps to Move from Struggle to Strength. And we were in the middle of a great conversation. Megan, when you were telling us about how we can overcome our stuckness, if you will, and where we get stuck in our thinking, old thinking and beliefs. You described how you were stuck in your own old thinking. Some of that you didn't even know of until it all came to a head in your marriage. So how do we become unstuck? You were on that before the break.
That is a huge question. How do we become unstuck? Well, it takes a lot of practice, but it's really kind of reality testing those thoughts of what is keeping us stuck. So if you're saying, I'm not enough, it's literally trying to figure out where is that coming from. And 99.9% of the time, it's not coming from someone, it's coming from us.
Uh-huh.
Right? So right before the break, I had said, I came up with this idea that I wasn't enough because of the fact that, not based on my ex-husband never told me that, but it was based on the fact that, I came up with that because of the behaviors and the decisions and everything that he said.
Right.
I created that story in my head that I wasn't enough.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And so it's really kind of tested the reality of who is the source that is telling you that you're not enough or that you're not, whatever that story is, right? And 99.9% of the time, the source is ourselves.
Yes. I like.
And we're not reliable at all. We
I know.
are not reliable.
I like to think of it. Sometimes I'll tell people, you can give yourself all kinds of positive affirmations and how great you are, and yes, I'm a good person. And then there's that little nagging voice that comes from deep within that says, you're not good enough. And that's the one that's always seems to win. How do you beat that one?
Well, and that's the crazy thing is that's kind of why I started my movement, the I Am Enough movement, is because we have to have those visual coping skills. Mm-hmm. So sometimes when we're in our head and we say, oh, yeah, well, we are enough, well, that doesn't work all the time, right? Because our mind is crazy. It can jump from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And so with the movement, that's why I created the movement, is because of the visual coping skills. So there's something to be said about when you're in your head too much, we have to have something visual to take our mind off what is going on in our head.
Yeah, I like that. What kinds of things would you suggest?
So that's why I created the I Am Enough movement, because as a therapist, I've been a therapist, like I said, for 15 years. I'm a huge visual coping skill person.
Uh-huh.
So it's literally recreating the statement. So instead of saying I'm not enough, you say I'm enough because.
Oh, okay.
And on these cards that I send out to people for free all over the world, we're in 23 states and 9 countries. You write why you believe you're enough. And for some people, it's literally because they're so new at this. I help people realize that maybe it's just because you're enough because you got out of bed this morning.
Yes, that's true.
Right?
That's true. There are days. There are days when that is definitely the case.
Exactly, and sometimes it's bigger than that. But wherever you have to be to get to that point, then that is what you write on the back of your card.
Oh, I like
because
that.
I got up out of bed this morning.
Okay, I like that. Well, that was one of the things that I wanted to talk about. Since we're on it, why don't we just talk a little bit more about it, this I Am Enough movement. What is that all about?
Well, it's really exciting. So once I wrote my book, I became a best-selling author. And again, I was just sharing my story. I wasn't expecting this book to I never expected to be an author. And so the book took off, and, I was sharing my story all over the country, and I was like, okay, so God, what do you want me to do next? I want to give back. There was just something that was unfinished for me. And so I came up with this idea because as a therapist, like I said, I talk a lot about visual coping skills. So I came up with this movement, and it's simply if you go to my website, you'll see the cards on the front of, there's just these little business card type things, and it says on the front, I am enough.
Yes,
and
I
on
saw
the back,
those.
and on the back it says the word because with 3 lines.
Okay, so
and just like I
so
said
it
earlier,
gives people a way to not only give them the affirmation, but also to validate it with some sort of a statement or sentence.
Exactly, and so you carry that card with you at all times, right? So I have a card in my purse, I have a card in my car, in my living room, in my bathroom, because we struggle with this so many times throughout life.
Yeah,
It's
I
not
need one. I
every
need
day.
one on my forehead, I think.
Seriously. And I'm known as the I am enough girl here in Southern California, but I still struggle with it all the time.
Yeah, I noticed that I have to, as much as I've done to work on it and overcome it, it's still, I can go to bed at night think I'm enough, and I can wake up the next morning and, and I don't know what happened overnight, but something did.
So I have a great thing you should put over your bed.
Okay.
So I have this quote. It's from Brene Brown. I don't know if any
Yes.
of your listeners, I'm sure you all know her.
I'm sure they've heard of
But
her. Yes.
I got this, and it's over my bed, and it says, no matter what happens at the end of the day, no matter what happens, no matter what I get done, at the end of the day, I am enough.
Oh, that sounds good. I like that.
Because think about it, when we go to bed, we're like, oh, I didn't get this done, or I didn't get that done, or this isn't off my to-do list, or I failed by talking to this person, or I didn't do this at work, right?
That's right.
And it's literally just reminding yourself, no matter what, at the end of the day, no matter what happened, no matter what you didn't get done, you're enough.
Right. Well, and it's also about acknowledging yourself and what a lot of times if we find that we have to rely on that from someone else, we have to be validated. That may be why you got sucked into somebody. You looked to your ex-husband as someone to validate you, and when he didn't, then you were invalid or invalid. You became stuck.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
One of the areas that you also talk about, which is in your book, which is near and dear to my heart, I spend a lot of time talking about this, is that we need a sense of mission or purpose. And I know so many people who feel lost or without purpose. Tell us about how we go about finding that purpose.
That is one of my favorite steps in my book. So that's the one thing I love about my book, is that every step that you read in my book, I actually was going through them while I was writing the book. And, the book is a journal page. So, I ask you questions, and you can journal about it so that you can actually start working on it. And for me, it's just literally rediscovering who you are. And then once you rediscover who you are, you're able to visualize this new life. If you would have told me 2 years ago that I would have been a best-selling author and I'm on this radio show right now and speaking all over the country, I would have been like, you're crazy.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
But once you really go through the steps of rediscovering who you are whenever you go through anything in life, then you're able to visualize this passion and this purpose. And it's been so many of my clients, so many of my friends and my family that have read the book, that have been through me in this journey, they've been able to do this, and it's been incredible. I mean, I no longer work 40 hours a week as a therapist. I literally go around the country to help people believe that they're enough.
That's amazing.
That is my passion, and that is my purpose. And
where do I sign up?
I know, right? It's amazing. I mean, but again, I always have to be authentic and say, I still struggle with it, but I know how help people get through those days when we all struggle with it.
Right, right. Well, you've lived it, and it worked for you, and you've helped others, and it's worked for them. So you're on to something, I think.
I'm trying. At least.
Well, hey, that's all we can do, right? You know,
exactly.
What doesn't work or what works better, that'll be your second book. What I learned from the first book, right?
Yep.
In the area of finding our true selves, you speak about the need to be congruent in our thoughts, values, and behaviors, and I call that being in integrity with my true self in my book and with my relationships. And I laughed because as I read a little bit further, just a few paragraphs later, that's what you talked about was integrity.
Yes.
So how do you said your pathway to integrity was to stay true to your word. How hard is it to stay in integrity, and how do we do it?
That is such a good question.
Hey, I'm on it tonight, huh?
You are totally on it, because I've actually never been asked that question.
All right. Well,
usually I'm asked, like, what does it mean to discover your true self? But honestly, like, what does it mean to be on the path of integrity? It literally means that, you know, over the last year and a half, I've had a lot of struggles. Like, after the book came out and all of these interviews, being on your radio show tonight, and everything that's happened over the last year and a half, I've had a lot of people that have, you know, questioned that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just literally like continuing to share my message, the same message, being proud of who I am, knowing that I'm enough, because I am authentic and real. And my integrity shows through the way that I treat people, the way that my social media is, the way that my friends and my family and people that know me are. Like, that's integrity.
Right.
You can tell people that don't have integrity when they have different things on their social media, or you know people that know them and they're talking about different things, and, oh, this person, no, they're really like this
right.
and that. And so, you know, my top 3 values are authenticity, integrity, and honesty.
Mm-hmm.
After I did my first step in my book, after the affair, was just like rediscovering who I was, and those are my top 3 values. And although I fail, I'm not sitting here saying,
I know how hard it is.
My authenticity, integrity, and honesty.
If you were to say you never failed, I would know you were being inauthentic and dishonest.
Exactly.
So, right?
Yeah. No. So I fail a lot because I'm a human being, but at least I can be honest about that. And I think it's in this world today in society, it's just so hard to find those real people.
Oh, sure, I know. Hey, one of the questions is, I know that we can't stay in integrity all the time or be in integrity all the time. What happens, or I guess, how do we get ourselves back in once we get out?
Ooh, good question.
There's another one. Okay.
You are like, you're on top of it tonight.
I am, I guess. Okay.
So how do we get back in integrity?
Right.
I think for me is because of my relationship with God is asking him, you know, like having my prayer time and saying, okay, like what can I do to, you know, I really messed this up. And, you know, I'm asking for forgiveness. And then it's either, you know, asking the person for forgiveness if I screwed up. I'm very honest about that. You can ask any of my friends, family, people. If I mess up, I will be the first to go there and be like, it may take me a couple hours. It may take me until the next day. But if I mess up, I will be very honest and say, you know what? I really screwed that up.
So
and I'm really sorry.
Here's another tough question, and I'm asking it to myself as much as I'm asking it to you. How hard is it for you to forgive yourself?
Oh, you know what? I've really struggled with that because I think a lot of times I find myself saying, oh, Megan, it's fine. So, like, I'll apologize to the person, right? I'll be in integrity and say, you know what, I really screwed that up. I'm so sorry I said that. I'm so sorry I did that, blah, 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 whatever. But then for me, it's like, oh, you're fine, Megan. You're fine. You said you were sorry. but I don't think I really worked through that. So
I find that we're often harder on ourselves than we are
Oh, yeah.
on.
100%.
We'll let other people off the hook, and we won't let ourselves off the hook. So.
Well, and that's what leads to the negative self-talk of not being good enough, right? So, not necessarily did I let my ex-husband off, but I took more of the blame and the guilt of his affair because I allowed myself to think I wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't forgive.
That.
Yeah. So it's very difficult. We are so much more harder on ourselves.
Oh, yeah. I'm right there with you. I know that you do speak about changing your mindset, and you describe yourself as a mindset coach. Can you talk a little bit about what a mindset coach is? What does that mean?
Well, to be honest, I think that was a little bit in between while I was branding myself because, as a licensed mental health therapist versus a mindset coach, there's this negative connotation with mental health.
Right.
There just is. And I've been a therapist for 15 years. That's my expertise. That's everything I know. And it kind of just, correlates into being a coach.
Right.
And so I kind of did the double folds of like mental health therapist and mindset coach. But it's the same thing. You
can do some things coaching that you can't necessarily do as a licensed therapist, so that makes it gives you a little bit of leeway on doing some of the things that you're able to do.
Right. And so a lot of clients that I work with, it's literally all about mindset. It's not like diving back into our childhood and all of that stuff. It's literally just focusing on the here and now, which I talk a lot about in my book with the grounding and all of that stuff. It's literally like, what are you telling yourself? Take a second, think about what you're telling yourself whenever you feel anxious, depressed, sad, overwhelmed. Take a second and think about what you're telling yourself, and you will literally realize that what you're telling yourself is what's causing the anxiety, the overwhelm, all of that stuff. And so I really focus on our mindset and how to use grounding skills to distract our mindset so that we're able to focus on the here and now and not the past and not the future.
Right. Well, it's just amazing stuff. And like I say, it is so similar to the stuff that I'm writing. We must have been channeling one another as we were writing. So what is your next step? What are you doing next for yourself?
Well, right now I'm really focused on the movement. I'm really focused on, sharing the movement all over the country. I've touched 23 states and 9 countries. And so my goal is to hit at least all 50 states by the end of September.
Oh, wow.
So it's just really, I'm doing a lot of, interviews and things like that on the movement. And then also just speaking all over the country and just sharing my story and my passion of, wanting people to believe that they're enough.
The word must be out about you, huh?
It's spreading a little bit. Yes, I'm kind of known in California, like SoCal, in the speaking arena as the I'm Enough girl, and in Michigan as well. So that's because that's where I'm originated from, is Michigan. So it's fun. It's just it's fun.
We've talked ourselves into another commercial break, so we'll be right back. Hang in there. We'll see you in a minute.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
Do you know an older adult who seems to have no purpose in life? Children are grown and gone, health problems limit a social life, driving has become difficult, loneliness and boredom are not unusual for older adults. One of the best gifts you can give them, or give yourself to help them, is a book titled Old Age, The Paradox of Physical Decline and Spiritual Greatness. It explains that although one's physical body is declining in old age, one's spirit is growing stronger, wiser, greater. There's new purpose and new meaning in aging. Go to Amazon.com. Look for the book titled Old Age, The Paradox of Physical Decline and Spiritual Greatness by elder care advocate and author Barbara Matthews, and order it today. That's Barbara Matthews' Old Age, The Paradox of Physical Decline and Spiritual Greatness.
Welcome back. You're tuned into KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is your fill-in host tonight, Dr. John Smith, filling in for Father John Reed, who is the usual host of this show, Viewpoint, and he's taking a well-deserved night off and has asked me to sit in for him, so hopefully I'm doing justice to his show and that he'll have at least 2 or 3 listeners when he comes back. I wanted to reintroduce my guest tonight. It's author Megan Fenyoe, LCSW. She is the author of You Are Enough, 5 Steps to Move from Struggle to Strength, and I should say the best-selling author. Congratulations on that. Megan, welcome back to this segment. We were talking a lot about the various aspects of your book, and one of the things that I forgot to ask you in the last segment was one of the things that you recommend is self-care for the soul, or at least that's what I call it. And I know for me personally, I have struggles in this area. So what do you recommend in order to do self-care?
Self-care is so important when it comes to us, going through trials and tribulations, and even when life is going really well. And so self-care is so important, and there's so many different tools of self-care that we can do. You can start with your morning routine, which can be like a gratitude list, or, starting your intentions for the day, anything like that. And self-care can also be like going to the gym every day. It can be doing your devotions every day. It can be being with friends. And I always say, like, every day we have things that we have to do, and there has to be one thing every day that we want to do. That is the key.
What if I just want to stay in bed, if that's the...
Well, staying in bed, I agree. Like, there's times where I have stayed in bed. It maybe happens, like, 3 or 4 times a year. But you have to look at, like, why are you wanting to stay in bed? Is it because you're just tired and you just want to stay in bed? Okay, great. But if you stay in bed, is it because you're depressed? Are you anxious? Are you unmotivated? Right? Because there's days where I stay in bed, like I said, a couple times a year. It's just because I'm tired.
Right.
And I want to, like, have my phone off, and I don't want to be distracted by people, and that's okay.
Right.
So it's literally like asking yourself, like, why do you want to stay in bed all day?
Isn't it interesting? I don't know if it's this way for you, but for me, when I'm in my true self and when I'm really doing on my mission and feeling like I'm on purpose and all of that, I don't get tired. In fact, it re-energizes me. Is that true for you?
100%. When I'm doing the things that I want to do during the day, not everything that I have to do. So, like, I try to work out every morning. Then I have more energy to do the things that I have to do because I've had that personal time. When I do my devotions at night, I've had that personal time with God. It's like I'm able to sleep at night. So it's those things. Even if it doesn't have to be an hour, 2 hours every day, but you have to have one thing you want to do every single day, even if it's 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It literally changes your whole outlook on the day.
Right. Well, and you're feeding yourself first if you're exercising or meditating or doing some of those things first thing in the morning, then you have already gave yourself a gift before you start the day.
Exactly right. 100%.
Yeah. I'm again back on this integrity thing. A couple of things came to mind while we were on the break that I wanted to ask you about it. So I know my thinking about it is that when I was out of integrity with myself, I would feel bad. That's when all of my darkness would come up, the shame, the guilt, the dark side. And what I thought that was who I was. I started defining myself by those negative emotions. Later, when I started doing my own work, which led to my book, when I started to discover I'm not that person. My true self is that person I just described to you, who's the one that when I'm on purpose, when I'm doing who I am, all of those negative thoughts and feelings just sort of dissipate and go away. So finding the ability to get myself in integrity means that I have to be aware of when I'm out of integrity. Sometimes that's hard. I don't always catch myself being out of integrity. How do you do it?
How do I find when I'm out of integrity? Well,
or how do you know it? Yeah.
My roommate tells me a lot when I'm out of integrity.
Okay.
And that goes with accountability. Like, sometimes you need an accountability partner,
right,
to help you, like someone that you're close to. So whether it be like a significant other, a best friend, a family member, whatever it is, like those people can tell you when you're out of integrity so that you feel, not defeated by that.
Uh-huh.
So if I'm out of integrity, I know that I'm not feeling motivated, I'm not feeling inspired, I'm not feeling excited.
Exactly.
And so my roommate, my best friend, does that very well. She'll be like, you're not yourself right now. You're not, what's going on, blah, blah, blah. Or I can tell when maybe I'm moody or irritable or, just have this guilt. That's when I know that I'm 100% out of integrity.
Right. That's been my experience. Although you bring up a point, you really need to make sure that the person that is holding you accountable or the person that is giving you the feedback that you're out of integrity is somebody that you can really trust, because that could be used against you as you experienced in your relationship.
Right. So I 100% agree with that. Like, you have to have a person that literally you can trust. Right. And for so long, I didn't have that person, because every time I felt like I could ask him that, like, hey, like, I'm struggling with this or I'm not feeling this, like, he would make me feel that I was wrong.
Right.
And a person that cares for you, if you're out of integrity, they're not going to make you feel guilty. They're not going to make you feel that you're wrong. Mm-hmm. They're just going to tell you, like, hey, you're not yourself. What's going on? Right.
And those are great points. You've got to, you kind of know the difference now, although, when you were in the middle of it, it just was very difficult because you'd never experienced anything like that before. So you thought that you could trust that person, and then later you found that that wasn't the case. So that's a tough experience to have, I'm sure. So as you are going forward, you've got the I Am Enough Foundation or movement. Mm-hmm. You also are a host or co-host of a podcast, The Blonde Bombshell. Yeah, I got to know about that one. Tell me a little bit about that one.
Well, so I started the Blonde Bombshell podcast with a coworker. Well, she's not a coworker anymore, but we worked we're both mental health therapists. She's a psychologist,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm an LCSW. And we started this podcast. We're just going to celebrate our 50th episode next week.
Oh, wow.
And we're both blondes.
Uh,
So we have a lot of all of our interviews are with females, and they don't have to be blonde. But it's just about, female empowerment, talking about the struggles that led to their strength, which is kind of based on the book. But, what does it mean to be a bombshell and, really, unapologetically owning who you are?
great.
So it's been a wild ride, and we've had amazing guests on the show, and we're about ready to celebrate our 50th episode.
Oh, wow. Congratulations on that. I guess I don't qualify. I don't have blonde hair. In fact, I don't have any hair at all, and I'm not a female. So I guess I'll have to just listen to it and get what I can from it. So tell us about how listeners can contact you or find out more about all the exciting things that you're doing, or find out about the I Am Enough movement. What do they need to do?
Well, the great thing is that the I Am Enough movement, people can order their free cards. So I ship them, I mail them all over the world. And people can order their free cards on my website, which is just meganfenyoe.com. We just launched also I Am Enough movement t-shirt, and you can find out more about me, all of my interviews. I have a ton of free resources, workbooks, and affirmations, and all of this stuff on my website. So it's just meganfenyoe.com.
Awesome. meganfenyoe.com. So that's how you find out about Megan Fenyoe, her book, her movement, I Am Enough. So we're getting close to the end, and I want to ask you one more question. What question did I not ask you that you feel what do we need to know about you, or what did I need to ask that I didn't ask?
Oh, my goodness. I've never been asked that
See,
question before.
I scored at least twice tonight on that.
You did. I think probably one of the questions that I ask on our podcast is what is your favorite mantra or affirmation?
Mm-hmm.
And it's one that I wrote in my book, and I created it, and I say it all the time. And so I would just love to give your listeners kind of this affirmation,
please,
for them to hold true to their heart. And it's basically this, you are enough just as you are, regardless of whatever season you're in. And the more you celebrate and focus on that, the more you will live in your strength.
Wow. That's powerful. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Say that one more time.
Yeah, of course.
Do you remember it? No. Say that one more time.
I do remember it, of course. You are enough just as you are, regardless of whatever season you're in. And the more you celebrate and focus on that, the more you will live in your strength.
Wow. Okay. I felt that one, so that's a good one. I like that. So you've got a lot going on. You've got some really good ideas and some really good messages to pass on to people, and I can't emphasize enough the idea about being your true self, because that's, like I say, my thing as well. And I think most of us lose awareness of our true self when we're younger, when we're children. So it's not necessarily that it all happens from bad things, although certainly a lot of bad things happen to children that cause them to lose that awareness. But as we are sort of indoctrinated into the world, we sort of lose track of who we really are and our specialness and our purpose. So I think we share some of the same ideas along that. We did talk a little bit about it, but I want on sort of the last couple of minutes here, what I wanted to really ask you was, what does a person do? How does a person identify or start to work on developing or identifying their purpose? Because I tell people it's not about what you do necessarily, and it's not about the roles that you play necessarily. Your purpose is about why you do get up in the morning. What do you tell people about that?
That is another great question. I really think it's about, and again, this is like the 5-step system in the book, is like, first of all, you have to rediscover who you are. Anytime you go through something in life, whether it be career, relationships, health, anything that causes you to question who you are, you have to rediscover yourself. And in the book, there's a bunch of questions that I ask to help you in that process. And once you start that rediscovering of who you are, you're going to rediscover your values, which is going to help you start visualizing your passion and purpose. Okay. And I share my story because, like I said, I went through all of these steps when I was going through that trauma in my life. And that is why my book is my saving grace, is because I started rediscovering who I was, and I started visualizing me like being on stages and radio shows like yours, and TV shows, and sharing my message of, yes, I was in this abusive marriage and I didn't feel like enough, but guess what? I rediscovered who I was. I found out who my true self was, and now I can visualize this life and go after it every single day.
Right. Wow, that's great. Well, my guest tonight has been Megan Fenyoe, LCSW, the best-selling author of You Are Enough and a founder of the I Am Enough movement. So, again, Megan, what's that website?
It is www.meganfenyoe.com.
Excellent. So I thank you for being our guest tonight. Hopefully there will be a return visit at some point. I think there's a lot to talk about, and definitely we'll keep you in mind for that. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. This is Dr. John Smith. I am filling in for the Father John Reed, who's the usual host on this show. One last thing I want to say again before we end tonight. Save the date, November 21st and 22nd at the Anaheim Convention Center is the California Community Opioid Conference, which is sponsored by Social Model Recovery Systems. Saving one more life, preventing one more death. You can find out about that at smrsopioid.org, smrsopioid.org. Hope to see you there. And it's been my pleasure and honor to be hosting this show. Hope to have a chance to do that again sometime. I've really enjoyed it. Megan, thank you again for being our guest tonight. And I will turn it back to Father John for next week's episode. Thank you.
KCAA Loma Linda. Listen on 1050 AM, 102.3 FM.